tell me about, like, how did you end up at Tubi and, like, how...
Yeah.
We can start. Yeah.
So I had gotten back from maternity leave. I was working at Tinder at the time, and I took about 5 months to have my son. And I came back to Tinder, and it was a strange environment. We had gone through a couple of CEOs.
Okay.
And my CEO at the time, George Felix, was there. He'd been there for about a year. I'm literally back for a few weeks on mat leave, and he tells me he's leaving. And you could just tell, even though I was out 5 months, so much had happened, and it was going to be challenging to get work out the door with George gone and not having a leader. So I started to pick my head up and kind of think about what would be next for me. I felt like I was at Tinder for almost 3 years. I had a good run, saw it through the pandemic, like completely got us to be more TikTok and Gen Z.
Yeah.
And
was able to have a child and sort of get through that as well.
And I was really thinking, am I crazy right now? Like wanting a CMO role? Like I have a 5-month-old baby.
Yeah.
Like I can just continue to do this job. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's best for me and my family.
Yeah.
But I had this itch that I needed to scratch just to see what else was out there for me. And I think what I really came to be was that if I'm going to be away from my kid, it better be fucking worth it.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you have to really like what you do, and like you have to be committed to it. And
that makes a ton of sense.
I didn't feel like I was like passionately into it anymore.
It makes a ton of sense too, because you're like, you're in this crossroads where like I'm gonna go back to work.
Yeah.
So many people I think would tap the brakes and be like, I'm just gonna coast for a while.
Yeah.
But like for you, it's like actually, if I'm gonna spend this time away, I want to spend it.
Yeah. Why spend it coasting? You're still spending time. It's
right.
Still time
it's still
away
time
from
away.
Your child.
Yeah.
I'm still like, trying to pitch, 6 campaign ideas, all of which are going to get killed, maybe approved, killed again. Then we need to change them. Then they're gone.
Right.
It's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a swirly environment. So I started looking at CMO roles, and interestingly enough, I got an email about this role at Tubi, and I told the recruiter immediately no. And here's why. At that time, this is 2022, this is when the streaming wars were hitting their peak. Netflix posted their worst quarter ever. Layoffs starting to happen, and I've never heard of this streamer.
Right.
So I was like, I don't want to enter the streaming wars, at a company that I haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
Wasn't educated on the space. I knew the big players, the ones that I spend on. And I also was confused because I thought, why wouldn't they want someone who has entertainment experience? I don't have any, none. And so I basically told the recruiter, you can throw a rock on Pico Boulevard and hit a great entertainment marketer. Why are you calling me? This doesn't feel like a fit. And she's like, it doesn't, but they don't want someone who has an entertainment background. The CEO and founder, he really understands what he wants. I think he'll really like your profile. Just meet him. And I met him, and we just got on. Okay. And I think sometimes people take jobs because of people.
For sure.
Versus the company.
Of course.
And this was one where I was like, I think I can get my head around this free streaming thing, but I really liked him. Yeah. And I liked his perspective on things. I liked his perspective on marketing. I liked that he was quite a contrarian. So I met Farhad, and I really was bought in. And so I jumped and took the job. It's
crazy because in 2022, I feel like no one had heard of Tubi. Yeah. And now it's like everywhere. It's so it's just a part of the conversation. And I think you guys are doing really interesting things with the way you're curating content and creating content specific to certain audience segments. Yeah. And I don't know, how did you rise to such fame?
Well, so here's the thing that people don't know about Tubi. Tubi is 11 years old. Tubi's product and the ML and the personalization and how we help people find their rabbit holes is something that's been perfected for a long time on the product and tech side. And we can get those inputs faster than SVODs because we're free, and we also have this massive library. So what do we know about ML and AI? They work better when there's tons of inputs to better understand viewers and what they're looking for, and all viewers want different things. Yeah. So I would say that the growth is, I think over the past 2 years, is taking that product and tech vision and that Tubi secret sauce and actually articulating it in our marketing and communications in a way that people understand it.
Right.
Because people don't understand ad-supported. And
Totally.
it's not like, I mean, of course we're always innovating on the product, but the core of what we do has not necessarily changed. But how we explain what we do and how we articulate our value proposition and how we lean into these fandoms and these groups of people that love Tubi. And they love Tubi for different reasons. They come to us for different things. But I think the biggest thing for me that I really was attracted to was when I was thinking about taking the job, I immediately go to TikTok and I go to social media and I'm like, what are people saying about this company?
Yeah.
Are they happy? Are they not happy?
Yeah.
And I found such a warm community of fans.
That's cool.
That I can then anchor a brand around.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just that Tubi feels so big because in bigger stages like Super Bowl or in a New York Times article, we have solidified what our unique value proposition is. And if you talk to Farhad now, he said, you guys just took what I was always trying to say and figured out a way to say it so that people understand it.
Yeah,
And
which I guess
so,
is the job of a good CMO.
That's the job of a good
yeah.
CMO, especially when you're in, tech-driven environments.
Yeah.
Usually founders are coming from engineering backgrounds or product backgrounds, and they're like, it makes sense to them. Why doesn't it make sense to the journalist, or why doesn't it make sense to the consumer? And you kind of need marketing and communications professionals to help understand and nail that, so that it's more broadly understood.
Yeah.
By just the community, the industry, the street, etc.
I feel like you're a type of person and leader that is very open to risk.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering how you got to be that way. How did you, a lot of people I think act from a place of fear, or I can't do that, or it doesn't seem like that's your vibe. How did you get that way?
I wasn't always that way. I mean, I started out as a performance marketer, which we are not risky people. Money in, money out, optimization, variance. You freak out taking risks in that environment. At WeWork, because it was the founders were so involved and the brand was so precious. I mean, there were people that literally feared getting fired if one Instagram ad didn't look the way that Adam and Rebecca wanted it to. I just got smarter and started excluding all the executives from my paid media list so they couldn't see what I was doing. So I think Tinder was a really interesting intersection for me because I was then at a brand that needed to take some risks. And to be honest, it took me a little while to get comfortable doing that. And I think it's just about, it's about a portfolio approach, how many things are tried and true, and getting the fundamentals right before you start swinging. And I think it's always interesting on how you introduce these things when you're coming into a new job. Do you come in and just focus on the fundamentals, and then does that bite you later because you didn't do anything interesting enough? Do you come in and start big swinging and it was too early and people weren't ready for it and you forgot about the fundamentals? So I think you have to kind of do both.
Right.
And kind of assess the team, the portfolio, the brand, and you have to understand it before you can take risks.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten to a place where I get the lay of the land, and I think because Tubi's a challenger brand, which my other brands were not challenger brands, the appetite for risk in challenger brands is much higher.
Absolutely.
We must.
You have to. Yeah. Otherwise, you're screaming into the wind.
Yeah, and it also depends on, when you're CMO, how dangerous is your CEO going to let you be?
Right.
And are they going to foster that? Now, I would say Farhad had a high appetite for risk, but Anjali has a much higher appetite for risk and gets very excited by it. So I feel comfortable going to her, and sometimes I'm like, is this not
crazy?
Is this not pushing it enough?
Oh.
Because she's going to want me to push it. And I think that it just depends on what your C-suite and your CEO's mentality is for it. But she has a very healthy appetite for risk.
That's great.
So we get on like that, and if she sees that I'm committed, she's like, okay, Nicole's going to sign up for it. She wants to do this. Let's do it.
That's
I'm
awesome.
not going to sit here and give her 500 reasons why not to.
Yeah, and I think when it's built in from the top down, it's so much healthier to be able to run a team, because then the team is open to that level of hey, crazy idea. Yeah. What do you guys think of this? Whereas sometimes when you go into a new organization and it's more static and it's a little bit more I don't know, like people are stuck. When
Yeah.
you come up with it, when you take big swings, people are like, it's hard to get them on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Or it just seems like too rogue. Like,
It's
what's
so
interesting
outside of
about
their
marketing
purview.
is we all have the same title.
Right.
But in every organization, our remits are different.
For
and then
sure.
in every organization, our battles are so different.
For sure.
So it's interesting because the job is so different depending on the organization, the attitude towards marketing, the people that make the calls, appetite for risk, like what your position is in the market. So I think it just depends. I've just kind of found a really great sweet spot where like I can take the risks, I'm enabled to take them, but at the same time, like I don't lose sight of like getting the fundamentals right day in and day out of how we show up as a brand. And I spend a lot of time that like probably doesn't get airtime and accolades on like, what are we doing in social every day? What are we like, how are we surprising and delighting our fans? Like I spend a lot of time looking at that. I'm constantly in the comments when we post something or we have a show coming out, I will look at everything they said, at every character, what they liked, what they didn't like. Like I just kind of absorb all that because that is how I kind of get my head around how we're going to do bigger things.
It requires a level of curiosity, and not everybody has that.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone wants to sit in the comments and go through. So how do you
I'm like
cultivate?
an internet gremlin. I'm just always going to be that way. Also, like, you know, in social environments, it's like mostly the younger generation. I'm always just curious, like, culturally how things are shifting. What are we supposed to be wearing? What can we say
Oh my
and
God,
not say?
yeah, of course.
What rapper are we into right now? Like, I don't know why I am obsessed with pop culture. I have been since I was 6 years old.
Okay.
So I love it.
And that makes for a healthy,
Yeah.
I think, appetite for a CMO to have that pop culture desire.
We kind of have to, like, no matter what brand you're marketing, I think like so much inspiration and technological advances and creativity is coming from, you know, the younger generation. And I just have such a reverence for it.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing about marketing and where is it going, I like spend a lot less time thinking about making something perfect. I think about what are the components I can give to the fan so that they can make a million cool things.
Yeah.
So like instead of stressing about what's the best trailer to put out there, it's like put a couple out, give a couple of fan groups BTS, cut some stuff for them, give it to them early, and then all of a sudden when it releases, oh, this person made the trailer, but they made it with Lego figurines. Oh, this person did like a thirst trap fan edit of like one of the lead, and they like tagged it to a Halsey song.
Cool.
Like they did stuff that like is so creative and so
That's cool.
authentic to the thing that they love.
Yeah.
That even though I don't make it, like my greatest joy is seeing that. Is seeing other people take the little breadcrumbs I put out there.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
make this beautiful cake.
That's really fun.
You know?
Yeah, stitching with you and like coming up with their own stuff, and
Yeah.
that's cool.
And like if people care enough to make video content over it, it's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's a huge indicator for
Yeah.
you. You said you're obsessed with the younger generation. Obviously, they're probably looking at you and they think like, oh my God, this CMO. Like people come to you, I'm sure, asking you for advice. What job should I take? What path should I go down? Do you have any advice for me on how I could potentially be you someday? Like, what do you tell that younger generation when they come to you seeking advice?
Be patient. Be patient. And be okay with the U-turns and it's not linear.
It's not.
And I'll tell you something, like when I do my bio, I always feel like a little bit of an ick.
Yeah.
Because when I look at other people's bios, I'm like, oh, they were at J&J for, 10 years as a brand manager and then went to ABI and then went and got to Harvard and got their MBA. Like it makes sense.
Yes.
Like you're reading it and you're like, tick, 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 makes
Yeah.
sense. Mine's absolute chaos war zone. And it's hard to explain, but I think it's what makes me
Unique.
good. I've been
Yeah.
a bunch of different places working for a bunch of different people. I haven't always been a marketer. And although it doesn't look good on paper, I think in practice it works well because I've forced myself to be in a lot of uncomfortable positions in a lot of different companies. And I think also cross-functionally understanding that, your CFO sees a different lens, your COO sees a different lens. It's
Of
important.
course. Yeah. And you almost have to be able to tell a story to each person that you're talking to, internally as well as obviously externally.
Yeah,
but
and
like you have to be able to frame it.
I'm telling my team, I'm like, don't use any of these freaking acronyms when you're going to the CFO. He doesn't understand what that means.
Right.
We are using language as marketers that makes it harder for other people to understand us.
Right.
And we just assume that everyone's speaking that same language, and it's alienating.
Right.
And so I think internally, even just teaching people, like, what are we trying to achieve here? Let's use plain language. We don't need to use any of the jargon that we use as agencies and marketers, especially internally. They don't understand it.
No, of course.
So, like, how do we just, like,
you have to break it down,
simplify it, and, you know, give a lay of the land and really drive home impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally our job is to simplify complex things, and so it's like, why are we making this more complex? But
we just do.
So I think you mentioned like being patient. I think sometimes being patient, especially when you're young, is really hard.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a certain level of almost faith. And I know this is a little woo-woo, but like faith in the universe that like it's going to work out and it's going to be okay. And the position that I'm in right now is going, like, it's going to lead me to the next thing, which will lead me to the next thing. And I don't know what that looks like, but like I know it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Have you like felt like you've come to that point, or have you always had that in you a little bit of like, it's going to work out?
I mean, I had times where I was completely giving up and I was like, let me just marry a rich man so I can just not work anymore. Like, it's not going according to plan.
Not going well.
Like, maybe I should just start dating and like hope for the freaking best. You know, like I hit my, after I graduated from business school, was working at startups, working at agencies. You know, it was a tumultuous time. I couldn't really find my footing. And I didn't know if it was LA, if it was me, if it was the economy. And I just got tired. And I was like, man, I'm so sick of making such little money. I am 32 years old. I still live with 2 roommates. I still can't, like, I still have no more than like $5,000 in my freaking savings account. Like, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. I got my MBA. I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's not working out for me like it is for everybody else. And I had like a dark year of just being like, okay, I'm going to focus on my dating life because that's the only life raft out of being broke with roommates until I'm, 50. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And so I did have like a really weird moment, and I had to move back to New York. I had 2 job offers on the table. One was in LA, one was in New York. And I just took it because I had to and on a whim, and it ended up working out for me.
Yeah.
And then when I got to New York and I was in that environment and the energy was working and I was working at Vayner and I was super excited about the work we were doing, I just kind of like locked into the work. And I didn't even realize that I was like making progress to be successful.
Sure.
And then when I took my first client side job at WeWork, I was just, didn't think that I was just being Nicole. I was just like doing my thing, what I knew how to do. I was like, had a very direct way of communicating that was appreciated there. I did know what I was doing, and they appreciated that I came with structure, that I came with urgency, and that I could drive results very fastly in a chaotic environment. And so that kind of just became my DNA. And maybe it's because of all the ducking and weaving I had to do in my late 20s and early 30s. Like,
and it sounds like, it's a combination of like, working hard and getting into the details and knowing what the fuck you're talking about, but then combine that with a little bit of luck and timing, and then also the ability to sort of adapt and duck and weave. Yeah. And that seems like a winning combination for eventual success. Again, you don't know, you can't see the forest through the trees necessarily when you're in it, but you know that there is a path.
Yeah, and I was at that point starting to like, I also had gotten an MBA, and I was like, I don't know what this is useful for besides $150,000 in debt that I have to pay every month. But when I got to Vayner and I was working closely with clients, I understood, I was just so curious about the client's business beyond what we were doing for marketing. And then sometimes when we get these crazy briefs to like spend a ton of money at the end of the quarter and everyone would be freaking out, like, why are we doing this? This is so stupid. It's like, well, if you heard their earnings call, this is what's happening. That's why they need to do this. And it creates context around why you do the work that you do.
Right.
And like, again, understanding the bigger company objectives. So I think I was able to be like a better partner to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I wasn't just focused on the brief and the work that they gave us.
Yeah.
Just focus on their business.
Yeah.
So, so that MBA took a while also, and I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing that either. It just depends on the timing and depends on where you are in your career. But it's something that I do leverage a lot now, especially when it comes to leadership and managing teams. I haven't been at any company that really does as good of a job as an MBA does of teaching you, like, really the grindy
The boring stuff.
ways
The
to
ways
like,
to-
how do you get people that are coming from all different backgrounds to like go to
Work
a
together.
common goal?
Yeah.
Like, how do you give proper reviews? How do you performance manage people?
Yeah.
Like, they do all of that at MBA school, and you have to work as a team, as a group. So you're
Yeah.
dealing with a bunch of different personalities to actually deliver work together. So I think it was extremely
Eventually helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess looking back at that Nicole in her 20s, like what would you tell her if you could talk to her today?
Oh man, I would say you're going to be all right.
Right.
Like, don't lose sleep over it.
Yeah.
You're
It's
gonna
all
be
going to
right.
work out.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You're going to be
The
where,
amount
like,
of times that
again,
people-
the comparison is like, you're going to be where, like, you're going to be fine.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
The amount of times people have sat on this chair, proverbial chair, and said that exact same thing. Like, I kind of wish we taught that to young people. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to be fine and it's going to work out. You know, if you have the right,
Yeah.
like the right sort of, like what we talked about, you're willing to work hard, you have a little bit of luck and opportunity, and you sort of mix that with, you know, your ability to like jump in and learn something new and your curiosity, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I heard this one quote is like, if you could see all of your past lives or your stages lined up on the wall, if you could just go and hug that little girl, that kid,
Oh,
that teenager,
totally.
that 20-year-old, and just say like, you're great.
You're great.
Enjoy yourself. It's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine.
Like,
I know.
if you could just do that and
Sometimes
have
I-
a reverence for all the versions of the person you've been.
Of course, and
and
that's
not
what makes you who you are
embarrassment, you know?
today.
Yeah.
I always think about like if I could tell my, you know, my 20-year-olds or 25-year-old self, like I have all the things that I ever dreamed of.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, it all happened.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you don't need to. I mean, I think we all were trying to be something that I think there was a lot of probably depending on how old you are, but you know, one thing business school did do that was kind of damaging is as a woman they beat certain things out of you. No talking with your hands, no femininity, no like the way that you stand, no cheerleader stance. Like it was teaching you how to be in a room with mostly men, which meant not doing certain things that are in our like my cultural DNA is to talk with my hands.
Right.
And there is a lot of what you should and shouldn't do there because they're trying to prepare you for corporate America.
Sure.
They know that it's not right.
Yeah.
But
So
their job is to set you up for success.
It's kind of besides the point.
Yeah.
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 It's like we're not fighting to win the war. We're like preparing you to go to battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that time, there weren't a ton of examples of women in very prominent, you didn't know what it looked like. I had never seen a woman in an executive workforce at that point in my career. It's 2008. And I worked in private equity. So you just didn't know what it looked like. So I just think it's so nice as an evolution now that there's
Yeah.
just more examples of it and ways to express and that we can bring our feminine selves to work.
Absolutely.
You
I
know?
was gonna mention, I mean, I think that our generation is probably one of the last that was like conform, take it all on your shoulders and do whatever you have to do to succeed, and that might even mean sacrificing your family or your health or whatever. Kind of take it all on your shoulders and just be quiet and keep your head down and do a good job. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, we're seeing that. I mean, McKinsey just put out their Women at Work report. It seems like a lot of women are like rethinking how they're going to work, how they're showing up, how they're even like the hours that they're willing to work. They're putting boundaries in place. And it's interesting because I don't think that was available for our generation or even our our mom's generations of
yeah.
women. I think it's only now becoming something that is available to the younger generation.
Yeah, and you can be so many different versions now. Like, remember how did you dress for work?
Oh, I mean, like pants
It's like,
and a shirt.
look good, but don't look too good.
Of course.
You can't be overly attractive because then they're going to think you're dumb.
Yes.
Like, you can wear a Banana Republic boxy suit, but a skirt suit might be too much.
Yep.
Like, it was just even so coded in, like, it was like you had to be kind of mid
Yes.
always, and you could
Yes.
never really be
Yeah.
the best version of yourself.
Sure.
Which, because it drew too much attention, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's, like, better. It's all for the
I
better.
do too.
I see the progression. I know that we have a long way to go, but.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think that it's interesting. COVID obviously was such a massive shift for everyone, and I think especially for women, it'll be like a lot of people left the workforce. A lot of people rethought their hours. They put in different they put different structures in place in their life, and who knows what'll happen in the next few years when we start to see the results of that. What types of businesses will be born out of that, or what types of like new ways of working we'll have in the environments that we work in. So I'm curious to see. Obviously, the progress is just going to continue to move faster and faster.
Definitely.
Okay. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that I should?
What are we missing? What were the other questions?
I can take a look. What inspires you outside of work? Do you have any hobbies or?
This is going to sound very hippie, but just the glorious nature of it all.
Yeah.
I live in California. I live right by the beach. I love the mountains. I love the air. I love the trees. I love the smells. I think nature is the greatest gift for all of us. And I think that when I need inspiration, getting out of the house, taking a walk, I had a coach once who said, no good ideas are ever going to come if you're sitting at your desk.
No.
Go outside and take a walk or take a shower.
Yeah.
2 places that your brain is like turned on for creativity.
Of course.
And so, that is my inspiration of just the beauty of it all. And then, I go to yoga, but I'm like, I have a little kid.
Yeah.
I have not a single goddamn
Extra
second
moment
to myself.
Yeah.
So, but I think there's a beauty in children that they are, especially when their imagination really starts to turn on and their creativity is really firing and they're so excited about things. That is just like this simple beauty of how their minds work before the world tells them to start caring about things is also really beautiful.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I try to get, I'm kind of a lazy girl, but I'm conscious with my son, especially now that he's 3, that I've got to play with him and I've got to be a character and I've got to put the superhero mask on and I've got to care about trucks and when we're on the playground, I've got to run around and play hide and go seek because that's what he wants to do.
Yes.
When really I'd just rather be bed rotting in my bed because that's what I was really good at doing
looking
for a
at
really long
TikTok.
time. I want to be with him, obviously, but I'm but it's just exhausting to give like that.
Of course.
But I do think it does force me to be a different version of myself, and I think that playfulness that they bring into our lives reminds us of keeping it simple. Also what we do is not, we're not saving lives out there, but also when you're thinking about creative, it's just about tapping into those pure, emotions and that pure joy. And I think children are the best reflection of that.
Yeah. It's interesting too when we speak about creativity, especially as marketers, and I'd be curious how you deal with this, but no good idea comes from sitting at a desk, but also no good idea comes when you're when teams are afraid or like you said, the wrong Instagram post at a certain org that you that could get you fired. That also stifles creativity. So how do you create an environment where creativity can thrive?
Well, I think my job as the CMO is to be tell my team, at the end of the day, don't worry, because it's my neck on the line.
Right.
My neck's on the line. You're not, if anything happens, if we make a wrong call, even if I'm not the one that made that call, that's on me.
Right.
So I try to give them as much air cover in that sense and try to, and I hope there's not leaders like that who are oh, that must have happened without my, approval. And, we've heard very prominent stories in the industry of that happening, of people underneath getting blamed for things that were elevated to a CMO level that person ultimately approved. So what's the point of, letting go of the social team?
Right.
You knew what they were doing.
Right.
It's on you. The buck stops at you.
Yeah.
So I think that they know that. And I have their back 110%. And you want to know what? Sometimes they're going to swing. Sometimes they're miss. Sometimes they're going to make a mistake. Yeah. But we'll fix it.
Of course.
It's not that big of a deal.
You can't always be perfect. That's just not how humans work or brains work or
And brands are kind of imperfect. So you have to be prepared. And this is something we think a lot about. At some point, something's going to go wrong. And it's who are we in those moments and how we act that are either going to make people love or hate the brand.
Totally.
It doesn't.
But also the leader.
Yeah.
It's however the leader acts in that moment.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be shit that goes wrong. It's the same thing with a marriage or any relationship, right? Things are going to go wrong. How are you acting in that moment? How are you reflecting that out as a brand to your audience and as a leader to your team?
Yeah. And I think consumers are generally asking for brands and people to be more authentic
and real.
So it's
and honest.
if you mess up, it's how you
how you deal with it.
Get through that.
Yes.
So I just don't. I think the worst thing you could do is just be afraid of everything and never do anything right. And so we're going to have some misses, and we should celebrate the misses as much as as the wins.
Yeah, I actually heard of a leader. I don't remember where it was, but they would have people bring instead of their successes, like their failures.
Yeah.
And they would celebrate them as a team. And what a different culture that could create if you were like, if you made it okay to like try and swing and miss.
Yeah.
You know,
At least you tried.
at least you tried.
And I would like, I'd love to see, more and more of it. I have an endless appetite for it.
Yeah.
So, and when I'm in those moments, I'm kind of, especially when you're doing big things like Super Bowl, you want to swing big or not swing
absolutely.
at all,
Well, I think we're going to end it here. I thank you so much, Nicole, for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming on.